clients told me recently, my PhD students are fighting over claiming first authorship, and they're just not willing to see what people in the other labs have done, what they've contributed to the project. And this has happened twice now. I hear this a lot, and actually it is the #1 mistake of the top 3 mistakes that scientists make when it comes to establishing long-term, fruitful collaborations. So today we're going to cover all 3 mistakes and how you can avoid them, because I don't want upset PhD students or difficult collaborators to stop you from being highly successful in your scientific career. If we haven't met yet, I'm Kathy Teresia, a physicist and a career coach for brilliant scientists who are at a career transition. And my job is to help you cross that energy barrier by defining your goals and creating a strategy to reach them so that you can create a career and therefore a life that you love. Mistake #1, fighting over author contributions. Specialize. That is the answer to this, so that each lab's contribution is obvious and therefore author order becomes less critical when it comes to claiming credit. For example, I did my PhD in a single molecule biophysics lab where we were known for single molecule optical tweezers experiments. So in the A3G paper, which had a lot of authors, it was clear who brought the biological expertise and who brought the single molecule expertise, and how we combined those to come together to create this beautiful new insight and impact in this field. Your lab might be new and not specialized enough yet to take this approach. If you're thinking, yes, but Kathy, practically, how would I do this? Then that's a clue that this could be you. For example, one of my clients was telling me, yes, but this approach won't work for me because my field is not as specialized as your field. And if this is you, you want to avoid mistake #1 by choosing your collaborators for a specific purpose that's part of your overall career strategy. Not a plan, a strategy. And there's 3 ways to do this. Method #1, conferences. You give 3 to 5 talks at conferences per year, probably more if you're that practical professor type from the Scientist Superpower Quiz. And people line up afterwards to ask you questions. So choose the right conferences, and that's where you'll find the collaborators that you need. If you don't know what type you are, take the free quiz at kathy.science/quiz. For example, one of my clients, who is the practical professor type, she went to a conference, and actually on the first day she heard that she got rejected for a job that we thought was perfect for her. So she spent that first day recovering in her room, and don't worry, she got a job that she loves, a great faculty position in Chicago, and she's very happy now. But on that second day of the conference, she gave a talk and she found 3 great collaborators outside of the field of tumor pathology. My husband is a second example. He wanted to start doing single molecule experiments in organoids for his ERC advance, which he hasn't written yet. And he was just like, I'll go to ASCP and there I'll find the collaborators that I need. He is really the practical professor type. Method #2, email. If you're not thrilled at the idea of talking to strangers all day at conferences, if you're, for example, the star scientist type or the numbers nerd type from the Superpower Quiz, this could be you. What you're gonna do is find the top groups that are specialized in the thing that you wanna do and email them. I rarely have done this, but I got it from Gijs, who was writing his ERC advance, I think this was 5 years ago or so, and he specifically wanted to work with somebody who had a complementary skill that he really needed in order to make this project work. And he emailed him once, no reply, and he emailed him a second time, no reply, and then he emailed him a third time. And then he got a response. Oh, I'm sorry, I was really busy, I had a personal life thing, but I would love to collaborate with you. I know that it takes guts to do this. And if after after 3 emails they don't reply, I suggest that you stop. And in that 3rd email, let them know that this is your final email. Why? Because you don't want to work with somebody who's not thrilled about your specialty, exactly the science and the work that you do fits in with their long-term career strategy. And remember from last week's video that if they don't reply, then it's about their priorities and their skills in saying no, in being clear and kind, and not about you or your science. Method number 3, use your network. For example, Frederick, who was a collaborator from Mark's lab where I did my PhD, he saw Remus's latest paper and he reached out to me and I connected them because they'd be great collaborators, and they are. Networking is my scientist superpower, so this is the approach that I would have taken had I been in my husband's position a couple months ago. ASCB would have been my 2nd method. My 1st method would have been to call a colleague from my first postdoc and be like, hey, I'm looking for a collaborator to do single molecule experiments in organoids. Would you be interested in working with me? And if not, you know this field like at the back of your hand, so do you know the right organoids person that would be super interested and excited about single molecule experiments? And if that didn't work, I try method number 1. I rarely go for method number 2 because, as I told you on Tuesday, I just got rejected and I really hate that. So I try to spare myself that if I can. But if I have to, if I strategically want to work with somebody who is at the top of their field, I will email them. And I really learned this from Kate. She was asking me like, but why don't you just call this person? Pick up the phone and call them. And I was just like, because I'm a physicist. But it is just how things are done. When I teach this in my one-to-one sessions, 80% of scientists ask the following question next. What if I try all 3 methods and none of them yield a fun, highly specialized expert who I'm really excited to collaborate with? Okay, no problem. If those are your results, it's just data. If you think that this could be you, go back and check your strategy, because that's a red flag that step number 2, your hypothesis about the state of your field, what would have to be true about your expertise and how it fits within science as a whole in order for you to succeed, might not be exactly correct. So you might want to go back and revise that before you can move forward. The second most popular question to come next is, how many long-term strategic collaborations should I have? And obviously this number is a function of your career stage. But if you have 5 plus or minus 2 long-term strategic collaborations, then you know that you're kind of in the right range. But most of us don't have too many collaborations. We have one too many of the wrong collaborations. And that leads me to mistake number 2, when not to collaborate. And this is mostly about establishing scientific independence. Option 1, collaborating within your highly specialized field. Then it is hard to establish credit, and you will have PhD students fighting over claiming first authorship. For example, one of my clients is a new-ish group leader in London, and we were out to dinner when I was there a couple of months ago, and he started collaborating within his field, and a really beautiful paper came out of that. But it's worthwhile to question, is this a strategic long-term collaboration? And if you're thinking, but why? You already know the people in your field, and it's easy to start collaborations with them, and your lab is new, and you need to get some papers, and you need to write some grants together, then that's a clue that this could be you. And if this is you, that suggests that it might be time to go back and visit step 1 in your career strategy. Why this field that you chose? And within this field, what makes you stand out? What makes you special? For example, Within the single molecule field, Mark's lab is known for complete and quantitative papers so that the conclusions naturally become obvious from the numbers. Obviously, he was my PhD advisor. Whereas Steve Block is known for the beauty of the biological systems and how he marries that with the beauty of the single molecule approaches. My husband's lab is known for combining fields in a way that pushes against the limits of what each field alone can do. Everyone's a single molecule biophysicist, but it's clear what makes them different, what one lab does that the other doesn't do, so they can collaborate with each other. Option 2, collaborating with your PhD or your postdoc advisor. For example, one of my clients has a new lab and she has a grant, a collaboration with her postdoc advisor in London. At the very beginning of your independent career, you might not have much choice, except for when you're writing a personal starting grant. In that case, do not do it under any circumstances. It will actually count against you. And if this sounds like you, establish other long-term collaborations so that you can distinguish your own independent research line, what your lab specifically does. But we're all becoming more and more highly specialized, especially over the past 10 to 15 years. So it's more likely that you're managing multiple collaborations on any given project, which brings me to mistake number 3, not knowing when to change collaborators. I'm going to give you 3 scenarios, and the most common of the 3 is, number 1, your collaborator is not at the top of their field anymore. For example, when I was working with a biological collaborator who would purify the proteins and label them so that I could see them one at a time, and these were very sticky proteins, it was really tough to get pure one-to-one labeled proteins. And then we changed collaborators, and she was actually a postdoc in the original lab, and she was using these cutting-edge methods that gave us such pure, incredible one-to-one labeled proteins. Number 2, when that collaborator is brilliant, is still at the top of their field, but they're really difficult to work with. They're really pushy, they want the results now, they want to meet every week. For example, when I was in London, I was literally at the opera and answering emails from my collaborators because I felt so much pressure to respond immediately, even though it was Friday night. And that can make working with people long-term really difficult. And the benefit of changing collaborators in these 2 situations is that it's not just you. Everybody knows that this person is either not at the top of the field anymore or really difficult to work with, and we do judge papers based on the reputation of the authors. And the cost of leaving is that they brought their network to the project as well. In that example, where I was frantically on my phone at the Royal Opera House right before my favorite opera, La Traviata, was about to begin, I was emailing the theorist that biological collaborator had brought with us. And leaving that collaboration also means that you don't get the computational insights and analysis from that theorist. If you're in a highly specialized field, or if you've been working with the same people since your PhD, that's a clue that this could be you. And if this is you, go back and use one of the 3 methods that we discussed earlier to find the collaborator that fit that hole. Situation number 3 comes up a little bit more rarely than the first 2. And that's when the collaboration isn't working well for everyone involved. For example, if 2 collaborators hate each other and refuse to talk to each other and refuse to attend meetings together, well, that's not a great long-term strategy for anyone involved. If this is you, then that's a clue that it's time to wrap up your project on the current grant and to don't write the next grant together. It's painful to end a collaboration that was working, but if it's not working anymore and you've done all you can to try to make it work, then it could be time to stop spending your precious time and energy on something that's not working. Just like an experiment or a project in the lab that's just not working despite your best efforts. One of your top skills as a scientist is knowing when to step back, evaluate, and decide to spend your time and energy in a different direction. But it might be impractical to do that immediately. And if this is the case, one idea is to see if one group leader could deal with the first collaborator and the other group leader could deal with the second collaborator so they don't actually have to talk to each other. And this could work for a short time, and that could be long enough to wrap up your projects together. If that's not an option, could you gradually start to back off from the collaboration and shift your strategy so that you're not relying on that collaboration to fund your lab? Collaborations are an important part of my career strategy because collaboration is my superpower, but it might not be your superpower. I've created a quiz to help you identify and articulate your superpower at kathy.science/quiz. Recently I had a client whose field I know really well, and step 2 in her strategy is solid, but she's still struggling to find the perfect collaborator for her ERC because she hates networking. And just in case this is you too, next week we're going to discuss my favorite topic, networking as a scientist. This is my field of expertise and I cannot wait.